Oh, we are live now. Hi, Dan and Adam. How are you? Welcome to the Saratoga podcast, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this cold, wintry. Robin, can I jeer the weather today?
Okay, so it's funny you said that because I was actually going to say I retract everything I said about jeering or cheering weather. And from now through probably March in perpetuity, I will be jeering the weather.
Well, then you got to apologize to me for jeering the weather or
My
cheering the weather.
sincerest apologies.
Okay.
Apologies.
Hey, let's accept it.
Excellent.
Cool.
You guys, I love a good reunion show. I have missed you both, and I think this is the first time in like 3 weeks that we've all been on together.
That's true.
Been a bit.
It's been a twosome for the past few shows.
I know, and we always prefer menage a trois. Dan, you were in Florida. How was it?
Wet. We with impeccable timing, we timed it just perfect to get Tropical Storm Nicole, going across the strait into Disney. We had 4 wet days at Disney. We made the best of it. You know, the lines are shorter. That's one good thing. But, you know, in Florida, rain usually means like hard downpour, not a slow, drizzly 6-hour thing. And so we did our best to make the best of it. And Disney, what bargains there? Geez, we hardly spent any money.
Oh, I heard it's very affordable. But I also heard that you were down there because you were part of Tiffany Trump's wedding party. That wasn't the case?
Yeah, I was on the A-list. I hung out with Governor DeSantis, celebrated his election victory.
Well, listen, we have a lot to talk about today because there was a city council meeting last night. And as per usual, they had a pretty packed agenda. So should we just dive right in and go through some of the highlights of the meeting?
Let's do it.
All right.
Lead the charge.
There were 2 presentations at the beginning, and one was from Rise, who works with the city to operate what they're calling, used to be called a homeless court. I think they're now calling it a community
outreach court.
A community outreach court, which is actually a far better name. And that started in the fall of 2021. It was established, and it's been extremely successful in helping our homeless population when instead of being ticketed or fined and, you know, trying to essentially address issues of homelessness through our penal system. Instead, caseworkers go out and find folks that have been summoned or, have a ticket or have been received
arrested.
some kind of, they've been arrested. Exactly. They've had some issue with law enforcement. Caseworkers go out and find those folks, bring them in for court on a special day, where the caseworkers and Judge Vero, who runs the homeless court, have actually already gone over all the cases beforehand to see what the best possible service would be to connect those folks with, so such that we're diverting them from law enforcement into services that could address their substance abuse issues or mental health issues or whatever it may be. And it's really innovative and actually like a pioneering program. And one of the things they mentioned last night in their presentation was that this is the only homeless court or community outreach court in all of upstate New York. And it's been tremendously effective in helping people get out of homelessness by connecting them with services rather than being punitive towards them.
Yeah, one thing they talked about is how this homelessness population, it's just a revolving door because they have no home, they don't have many assets, they get arrested, they get summoned to court, and they just don't show up. And it's for minor offenses, and it's just they don't get the help they need. So what it does is encourages this population, this homelessness population who's facing our legal system to seek help and seek treatment. And it really is a great program. It does a lot of good things in addressing our homelessness population.
And Adam, you had mentioned some of the statistics that they were talking about, and also kind of the increase in the homeless population that we saw at the Woodlawn parking garage this summer.
Yeah. So they talked about the parking garage and what there's really 2 reasons for the parking garage. One reason, and if you haven't walked past there down Woodlawn, it's a lot of times you can't even walk down the street. There's they've spilled out from the parking garage. They've kind of set up encampment on the street.
By which we mean there's a lot of vacancy / people, camping out at the Woodlawn parking garage.
Yeah. And apparently by the train station over there on West Ave, there was a homeless encampment. in the woods, that they're now developing the woods and essentially have shoot them all out. And they've ended up close to the Salvation Army, where a lot of their caseworkers are, where they can get meals. It was a place for the homeless to go. Unfortunately, it's not the best solution for our city and our city.
Yeah, no. And I think also one of the things you had mentioned that I found particularly depressing and sad, honestly, was that they had seen an increase in homeless individuals in the ages of 18 to 25 because they had aged out of foster care.
Yeah. So it's you have the reactive solution and the proactive solutions at that, and both of them need to be addressed. The reactive solution is, all right, we have these people in this vagrants in the parking garage. What do we do? And the proactive solution starts to come, all right, well, how did they end up there? And they were talking, many of the people ages 18 to 25 have aged out of the foster care system. So, they had a family and a home, and for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, they've aged out. They're not eligible for those services anymore. Which
is just so depressing and speaks to so many issues that we have in our system that are in place to, help children and aren't achieving that goal.
There's like a gap there, right? It's like a kind of a newly. I mean, it's always been there, but it's now that much more obvious that there's a gap beyond age 18 to help someone that's maybe 20 and still is in many ways a kid, but now is out there homeless.
Yeah. But what I started to find interesting is, and this presentation was run by Rise. They're really and they Judge Vero didn't have enough good things to say about Rise and vice versa. Yeah. Rise does a lot of great things, but I will say at some point you have to figure out what, like I said, the proactive solution of what's going on here, because Rise said they keep a lot of statistics on men, women, children, families. Every year they do a snapshot in time.
Yeah, they actually, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no,
they actually go out into the community with Shelters of Saratoga and inventory. They go to all they canvass the city and actually take account of how many homeless are in the community every year. So we have a real snapshot, a very comprehensive snapshot of what our homeless population is from year to year.
Can we just touch base? I know generally what Rise is. I don't know any of the people in Rise. Robin, you probably know some. Adam, you probably know some. Explain to our viewers as much as you can about Rise and who's involved.
Sure. I mean, I don't have as many details as I would like, but the person I know at Rise is Lindsay Connors, who used to work for the city of Saratoga and was phenomenal. She worked in the mayor's department. She went to Rise, and they really specialize in the homeless and transitional services for the homeless. I think that would probably be the best way to describe them. And I would encourage everyone to go look them up and support them, donate to them if you can. They just had a fundraiser last month, but they, in conjunction with Shelters of Saratoga, are probably our two best resources in the city for addressing the homeless population and helping really our most vulnerable population. So they do incredible work, and they were the ones that partnered with the city to establish this court with Judge Vero.
Oddly enough, my bike got stolen at the Rise fundraiser. But in the defense, I left it chained up for a couple days in a public area. And
was it one of those CBPHB bikes?
No, it was a blue Santa Cruz bike. So if anybody sees a blue Santa Cruz bike for a sale somewhere, let me know. But the one question, this is where I start to part ways with all the great that Rise does is they mentioned they also have statistics on where people were before they ended up here. And this is a problem I have is homelessness is a spot problem, right? So if somebody is, as soon as they step off a bus, out of a car, we come into the city limits of Saratoga, they become the burden on Saratoga to provide services for them. And I would love to see these statistics because, for me, it's a little bit of a field of dreams of the more great things we do for our homelessness population, the more we attract the homelessness. It's a cycle.
But do we know that that's the case? Like, I think that you are making that assumption, but I'm not sure that, word gets out in the homeless community that Saratoga Springs is offering a code blue or a homeless court, and thus it brings this influx of homeless in. Like, I'm not sure that's a correlation we can definitively make.
Well, you're right, and this is not substantial, but it's an observation that I've heard of, and I grew up in Saratoga. I knew rich kid, I knew poor kids. There's one person I know from the Saratoga, that I grew up with, who was part of that vagrant population. But with that being said, you're absolutely right. But what I find interesting is Rise has these statistics. And I'm gonna reach out to Rise because I think this is a very important part of this conversation, of that Saratoga can't be responsible for the homelessness problem or challenge that's going on in New York State and in America, frankly. So I will reach out to Rise and ask for those statistics, but I'm guessing they're not going to be free to share them, because they're gonna think that it's gonna show that Saratoga is an attractive place for the homelessness, and that's why we have this problem.
I can tell you one kind of little snapshot that might give you some insight into that was during the COVID pandemic, Mayor Kelly and the former executive director of SOS made a really big push to get the homeless out of the code blue during the winter, because it was so prone to the COVID virus spreading, just like rapid fire through the code blue facility. And so they moved the homeless into a hotel. And at the time, I believe they were housing maybe 30 to 40 individuals at the Holiday Inn. And my recollection was that maybe 7 or 8 of them were from the city, and the others were from Saratoga County. And so to me, the most logical first step in funding, whether it's places like Rise or SOS, or funding city or giving money to the city to help address this issue, the first step in that would be making Saratoga County, really holding Saratoga County responsible for their fair share of money in terms of addressing this problem, because I don't think that's happened. And it's very frustrating to me, especially when you're talking about a county that has an almost $400 million budget, and they're not picking up enough slack in terms of their financial, they're part of the financial equation here.
If I can jump in, and that is a good point. I'll jump off from there. What I'm seeing is, and this is good, that there's a more focus on the needs of the homeless, as opposed to, like you said, just putting them in the criminal justice system to not address the needs. What I'm not seeing, and this is consistent with what you're saying, Robin, is both comprehensive and long-term concerns. Let's face it, there's a lot of people that are concerned about the homeless issue. Some are angry about it. There's a lot of feelings out there. Some feelings are perhaps misplaced or wrong, but nonetheless, they're real. And what I want to know is from our government, both the city and county, is this is fantastic that you're addressing the needs for services. They need people need to eat. They need to have shelter, especially when it's really bad outside. Those needs are being addressed. The flip side of that, or the continuation of that, I guess, is what is the long-term plan? Are we going to have 20 and 30 people at the Woodlawn parking garage forever? And I don't know that that's been addressed yet. And that's not a criticism. It's just perhaps a calling.
Yeah, there is a plan, Robin. We'll talk about the navigation system.
Oh, and we lost Robin.
We lost Robin, but Dan, she got so excited to answer this, we lost her. But there is a plan for, I think they call it a navigation center, which is a place for the homeless to go that's kind of more comprehensive. The plan now is to put it at the senior center out by, what is that, Route 50 and Price Chopper. And what that does is,
closer to downtown, kind of like behind Congress Plaza.
Right? Yes.
Yeah. What is now the senior center is going to move to the Y, and I believe the old senior center will be that new location that you're talking about.
But again, the question is, all right, we're going to have 40 beds, but what happens when the next 40 come, right? Because the next 40 after that come, I just see that as it's a worry that Saratoga becomes the field of dreams, and then I know people will give me some pushback on it, but certainly we've seen you drive down Ballston Spa, you don't see the same the homelessness population or vagrant population that you do in Saratoga Springs. And why is that, right? And I'm making the argument at some point we're doing too good in some ways of the homeless population. And another issue too with the homelessness that's has to be taken into consideration is that by definition there is a higher percentage of mental illness, substance abuse in the homelessness population, and that leads to crime. That leads to violence. It's just it's unfortunate, but it's a fact that there's just higher percentages of mental illness and substance abuse. So it's something that has to be addressed. Welcome back, Robin. You want to go?
Sorry, you guys.
Yes. You want to define the navigation system, the navigation center?
So,
Yeah,
but real quick,
yeah.
Adam, just to your last point, I disagree with you. I don't think we should dump Robin. I think we should keep her on the podcast here. Go ahead. Back to you, Robin.
You guys, I'm really sorry. My computer died. So I'm like on my phone now, which looks all wonky. I can't see a thing. But anyway, where were we leaving off? Oh, one point I wanted to make that I will continue to make over and over and over again. When we're talking about the homeless population, we have to be really clear when we're talking about vagrancy versus people who are without homes, because there are two very distinct populations. And I will say this again, when it comes to the vagrancy, which I think is what people get the most angry about, meaning people panhandling outside their business on Broadway, the aggressive panhandling issue, that is best solved by educating the community to not give panhandlers money. When they stop making money, they move on to a different municipality. That's just how it works. And I also find the timing of this RISE presentation really significant, because we've just come off a month or a month and a half of the city council debating passing an ordinance to make it punishable to be aggressively panhandling by finding people who are aggressively panhandling. And that was a very controversial topic for several weeks. So I think this kind of reinforces that the city council did the right thing by not passing that ordinance, because to me, that's neither a long-term nor short-term solution.
Yeah, well, it is important, and Mayor Kim held a symposium on the homelessness problem in Saratoga, and RISE was there, and Salvation Army was there. And to an agency, they said, giving money to panhandlers is exacerbating the problem, not solving the problem. So,
but you're not going to change that. There are a percentage of society out there, whether they're just decent, good people, bleeding hearts, or fools, however you describe them. They're going to give no matter how much you educate them, because they believe that it's the right thing to do. I just don't know if there's any. Maybe there are studies or statistics or pilot programs that prove me wrong, at least to some degree. I hope there are, but my understanding of people is some are just absolutely going to give no matter what.
Well, and part of this is just that Saratoga has been a bubble for a really long time, and homelessness is affected, is there a place in America that homelessness has not touched? And so, yeah, it's a problem here as well. And it's not unique to Saratoga Springs. And I think people need to accept the fact that this is just part of, life in 2022, unfortunately. And it speaks to the fact that we have to address some of the governmental systems that are in place that aren't working the way they're supposed to be working.
Yeah, I agree. What I'd like to see in this is balance, right? I said some people are angry. That's no good. Some people don't want to do anything that has an element of government force to it, criminal justice. There has to be an element to that. If someone, like, they didn't pass the ordinance, I get that. But there are some things already in New York State penal law regarding panhandling near ATMs and so forth. Those need to be properly enforced and so forth.
I agree, and that maybe it would dissuade, someone who's doing that repeatedly to stop doing that. But on the other hand, arresting someone or ticketing someone who's homeless or a vagrant and punishing them with a fine, I mean, what the hell does that? I mean, that's literally, to me, that's absurdity. That's like the definition of insanity. Yeah, you expect them to show up to court, they're not going to show up to court. You expect them to pay the fine, they're panhandling. It just makes zero sense to me. But also, had you asked me to talk about the navigation center, or was I making that up?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what you started talking about.
So yeah, this has been in the works for a couple of years, and I actually think it's going to be really transformative and something we've needed desperately. The senior center is moving to the YMCA due to the generosity of the Dake family and the YMCA, who are building another senior center on the YMCA campus on West Avenue. And the senior center that's over by Vanderbilt, am I making that up? Yeah, over by Vanderbilt, is actually owned by the city of Saratoga Springs. We leased it to the senior center. And so now that they're moving, we're able to use that facility as a 24/7, 365 drop-in shelter for the homeless that will also connect them with services. They'll have services on site at that drop-in center, such that when they're there sheltering people or feeding people, they can also take that opportunity to connect them with the services that they need. Because as of now, if you are experiencing homelessness and you need shelter, food, etc., you have to navigate yourself all the way down to Saratoga County and Ballston Spa. And let me tell you, going through that process, I've gone through it in detail. It is extraordinarily difficult and challenging, and there's so many roadblocks in place to get down there and to get connected with what you need, that I think this will really, really be helpful in getting people out of homelessness and into a housed and stable situation, hopefully.
All right, let's talk
Okay.
about trees. Can we talk about trees?
Yes, I can't, by the way, Dan, I can't do the chyrons on the bottom anymore because I'm on the phone. So can you take over and switch them out for us? So when we talk about trees, we're not, we don't have homeless on the screen.
Okay. Yeah. Let me find this most recent one.
I'm testing the depths of your.
How's that?
There you go.
Oh,
awesome.
I'm a tech genius.
So there was also a presentation last night on the urban forestry program, and I caught some of it. I did not catch all of it, but essentially what I caught, and Adam, hopefully you can fill in some gaps here for me, was that the city of Saratoga and DPW specifically keep an inventory of the trees and the invasive species and whatnot in the city of Saratoga Springs, and work to make sure invasive species don't take over, work to, address trees that are sick or dead and so forth. And they really need a better software management system to be able to do that more effectively. And so there was a presentation on what they needed and why, and how it would help with urban forestry in Saratoga. I think it required about $4 or $5 million, but it's a long-term, like 7-year plan. And I don't know, beyond that, I don't have much more.
Yeah, there's a city arborist,
yes.
Correct? And right, the city arborist, his job is to maintain the trees in the city of Saratoga and make sure they're healthy and vibrant, and promote local species and prevent invasive species. But what I got out of that is that the city arborist needs people to help maintain the trees in the city, and people get our DPW is I don't want to say spread thin, but certainly not fat, and it probably might be spread thin next year. And so they really need the people and the technology to keep up with this what one part that makes it Saratoga beautiful. I know I live on Spring Street, and it's just gorgeous walking down the street here. It's because of the trees and the what they bring to the landscape. So it's a great program. It's something. It wasn't like they were asking for that money today. They were just they wanted to kind of make this an initiative, a projection, something the city is moving towards. Is protecting the trees in the city, which again, it's almost everything is viable and deserves resources and money. And this is another thing that the city has to decide where they want to put their resources to. But certainly, they made a good case for it.
Yeah, and I believe he said they had, when he started off doing this, they had 5 to 7 people working on this, and now he's down to 2 or 3 bodies. Yeah. And so, but he also talked about the importance of having people who really are professionals and trained and know what they're doing, because this is also a very physically dangerous job. And so you really need people who know what they're doing and have the right skill set. But I agree, the arbory and beautification that they bring to Saratoga Springs is something that we all really appreciate.
And you notice that if you look at some old photos from Saratoga in the 1890s and things like that, and you see such beautiful trees that are no longer there, Union Avenue, Broadway, and so forth. And there are new, there's been new ones planted. I'm not saying, but though these were adult trees, and what a beautiful sight. Some old photos of Union Ave. I wish I had some. Real quick, going back, we have a comment from Terry Briscoe on the homeless issue. He said here, I just want to read it. If you guys want to comment, feel free. And folks, this is not our opinion. This is do you want
to throw it up on the screen?
Yeah. How do I?
You should. Yeah, there you go.
Look at that. Brilliant, Robin. Thank you. Sure. Terry, I'll read it for those that are driving or something. The parking garage folks are vagrants. They verbally abuse people, and on more than one occasion have assaulted people.
Yeah.
That I'm angry about.
We feel you, Terry. I feel that. I do.
Yeah. It is. Like everything in life, it's a balance between compassion, but you can. I don't know if anybody's ever watched the show Intervention.
Yes.
And a lot of times they talk about the rock bottom, and all right, this is enough's enough where you have to make the decision of, are you going to enable somebody to live a vagrant lifestyle, or are you going to force them to hit rock bottom? And unfortunately, it's tough. It's not easy to deny services to people who need services. But something has to, you have to make it harder for vagrants to stay in the vagrancy lifestyle than to try to move towards a productive lifestyle. And that's the challenge.
I know we've talked about this a lot, but one of the things that I had thought would be a good way to address Woodlawn specifically is to turn that parking lot into paid parking, which very inexpensive paid parking, but to have that security station and the thing that goes up and down, just having that and charging like $1 an hour would be able to fund maybe another police patrol that could be permanently there. But it would also dissuade, I think, a lot of the vagrancy and also a lot of the partying that happens at that garage over the weekends. There is like chronic issues late at night, 1, 2, 3 in the morning on the top deck, because whether it's homeless, vagrants, or kids, high schoolers, they go up there and party. And if they get busted, if the police get called, they see it coming because they have to go all the way up to the top of the garage and they just scatter, Yeah. So it's kind of it's unfortunately a really kind of good place to party.
Yeah, I was there last Saturday night. It was fun.
Although I gotta say, the city center garage doesn't seem to have any problems with homelessness or vagrancy. So what are they doing differently, right?
Yeah, well, let's talk about you know what? This wasn't part of it, but let's talk about paid parking, right? I mean, I think there should be some kind of continuity with our garages. We're one of the only municipalities, and this is a really unpopular thing in Saratoga to say paid parking downtown. And I remember, back in the 80s and 90s when we were competing with the Wilton Mall, that paid parking was a big no-no, right? We want to have a strong, vibrant downtown, but we're not competing with that anymore. We're one of the few municipalities with our makeup that doesn't have any paid. We have the city center lot is paid parking. So I understand if Saratoga's not ready to stomach meters yet. But for those parking garages that essentially provide parking for the businesses they're next to, and for instance, the Adirondack Trust, I think everybody in this community loves the Adirondack Trust. We are so blessed to have them. They're such a great corporate partner for our city. But they get there's a parking garage built behind a block away from the Adirondack Trust. It's free parking for their bank and for their bank employees. So I would like to see the garages move to a paid parking. Robin, I think it would solve what you were talking about with just kind of give a little more life, one more barrier of entry to get in those parking garages, and it would generate revenue that the city could use for other programs like additional patrols.
I think if the correlation was made between charging people for the indoor parking garage spaces and correlating that to addressing the issues of homelessness and vagrancy, I think it would make it a more appealing option for folks. I also have always thought that to address the parking issues in Saratoga, it really needs to be like custom. Like we have to do kind of custom structures.
Right. Don't just drop down paid parking throughout the whole city.
And one of the things I think could be really attractive is making some of the spots in those indoor parking garages monthly leases for residents or business owners to lease per month. I think that would be another successful revenue source, but just throwing it out there.
We've got one more comment, but we're 30 minutes into the show, so we should probably move from parking. But let me at least show this comment from Gail LaSalle. The concept of rock bottom is pretty much debunked by professionals, and please don't use that show as a resource. It is sensationalized. I'm not familiar with the show, so I don't have any comment.
Well, that's a very I know Gail. I like Gail. I have a huge respect for her. She's a professional. That's an interesting angle, Gail. So thank you for chiming in there. It is at the end of the day, I've worked with a couple of those reality TV shows. Just from
me too.
From where, and there's nothing reality about them. I was working as a front desk clerk, and we had to check in this couple 3 times until they got it right. So was it real that they were coming and checking in? Yes, it was not scripted, but that was something these reality shows do. So hey, viewers, thanks for chiming in. Gail, you taught me something today.
Yeah, I could go into my reality show experience another time, but yes, the Dalton family was on Bravo once, and it was totally made up bullshit, but enjoyable. Anyway, one of the other topics that I know we really want to get to is the city budget. So should we move on to that?
It's budget season.
It is budget season, folks, and there's been a lot of budget drama, I guess I would say. the comprehensive budget was released by the Finance Commission the first week in October. There was a series of workshops for each department to discuss their needs and what they did or did not get in that comprehensive budget. And then the Commissioner of Finance is meant to put out an amended budget, and the City Council has to vote on it by the end of November. If they do not adopt an amended budget, they are forced by the charter to adopt the comprehensive budget, which was the first budget that was released in the first week in October. So I thought we were going to get an explanation of the amended budget last night at the council meeting. We did not.
So
Did we?
is there going to be another meeting before the end of November? Is that what you're telling me? Another
So I
city
believe they're going to, yes, they're going to be scheduling some special meetings. I believe the week of Thanksgiving, and perhaps one after that as well, because we haven't heard about the amended budget or seen it yet, and they have to discuss it. I think there needs to be another opportunity for the public to weigh in. And so, yes, there's going to be some special meetings coming up.
Yeah. And just I know we do this each show, but I think it's important for our viewers to break down how the budget works. So there's a requested budget. So each department gives the Commissioner of Finance their request for their budget, and it's like a Christmas list. They put everything on that budget they could possibly want, plus some, and it's like they throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and see what sticks. So out of that requested budget, the Commissioner of Finance creates a proposed budget, right? That's the right terminology.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's called the comprehensive budget, but yeah, she takes them.
Budget.
Yeah, correct.
And that's the first, that's the first proposed budget by the Commissioner of Finance.
Yep.
After that, the departments all have a chance to weigh in. There's budget workshops, and then it's the Commissioner of Finance can or cannot offer an amended budget. An amended budget kind of says, all right, we work through these problems, these issues, and then by city charter, Robin, if I'm correct, by November 1st, we have to have an adoption.
November 30th.
November 30th. So, by November 30th, if there's no budget that's voted on and adopted, the first budget that the Commissioner of Finance proposed becomes the city budget, which is we're really pushing up against a hard deadline here. We're 2 weeks away. We still don't have an amended budget for people to weigh in on, for departments to weigh in on, and there's one city council left before the budget becomes the budget. So it's going to be interesting. I feel like the city council is in a tough spot right now, trying to figure out what budget they're going to adopt.
I also watched all the city budget workshops. Like, yes, you're welcome. I watched them all. They were extraordinarily contentious. I have never seen anything like it. They were long. There was screaming. There was yelling. There was a lot of emotion. And so there is, and that's what I mean when I say there's drama around this budget. And it doesn't seem, based on last night, that some of those controversies have been resolved. Commissioner Montenegro said last night, and actually, Adam, maybe you'd be better at kind of recapping what he said to Commissioner Songby.
Yeah, Commissioner Montenegro and at his budget workshop, he was upset with his budget. And, and at the city council meeting last night, at the next meeting about the budget the city council is going to hold, I believe is the 21st. He was talking to to Commissioner Songby that these he's going to lay out his problems and where the shortfalls are and how they're going to solve these problems. And I think most departments feel that way too. We saw DPW get $1 million slashed from their budget. So it's I think a little bit alarming. We don't have an amended budget yet. Commissioner Maddie chimed in with.
This is the reason why you leave the second public hearing open until the budget passes. I believe it. Oh, that would be bad if they've closed the public hearing. So essentially you cannot, correct. So you can't vote to pass the budget until you have closed the public hearing. And the public hearing is really important because it's the only opportunity the public has to weigh in on some of the choices that are being put into the budget and that are really significant. I mean, when you talk about $1.1 million being taken away for the Department of Public Works, that's going to be layoffs. That means that the city recycling program isn't going to happen. That has tangible consequences. I also know that there was a $300,000 decrease in the rec department budget. That is, to me, unacceptable. I don't know if that's been resolved or how it's been resolved, but $300,000 out of their, I believe, about $2 million budget is just unacceptable in a moment when the city is prospering. Our sales tax revenue has gone up significantly. I think we have the second highest sales tax revenue increase in the state of New York. And we're also increasing taxes. And we have an extraordinarily robust fund balance. I think there's about $18 million in a fund balance, which means that there's money that's sitting unassigned to make sure that we have some security, financial security, and we have to have some money in that area of the fund balance. But $18 million is a huge amount. Let's see, Commissioner Madigan just weighed in again. I believe Manita, meaning Commissioner Songvi, set a third public hearing for their next special budget meeting last night. Yeah, we'll get back to you guys on when that next meeting is. We can drop it into the comments. I thought it was going to be on the 21st in the morning, but I could.
Well, they talked about the 21st and then the 28th, and I think the public comment was on the 28th. But again, we'll get back to that. But regardless, it's almost too late at that point, right? These things take time. I think what you had happen, and we have Commissioner Madigan here, following along but we had a lot of institutionalized knowledge there. She was in that position for 10 years. She knew the budget process. She had a good team around her. Her budget director was who I got to know. She was really lived and breathed the budget and understood it. And both of them are gone now. So I think what happened is you have kind of a new administration, and they just got caught up in the weeds, and now they're facing the deadline of November 30th. And it's going to be really tight and really interesting to see what they pass, because right now there's not a lot of people happy with the budget, and there's not a lot of time to figure out solutions to that.
Can I ask one of you to do a little, put your prediction hat on, and what do you see as a likely? I mean, they got a deadline, they got a hard deadline. I think they're going to get it done, but there's got to be some compromise going on. Robin, you sat in those seats. What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are as follows. In 2020, in the fall of 2020, it was my first budget season, and we were in the height of COVID and in an absolute financial freefall. And that budget season was hell, but we got through it, and adopted a budget that was received a commendation from New York State in terms of how well we planned for our 2021 budget during COVID. And so if we can make it through that successfully and not lay off a single person, then there is absolutely no reason why this city council shouldn't be able to come up with a budget that maintains, at a minimum, all the city services and jobs. So my guess is that the fund balance, which is so high, is the compromise will be taking some of the money out of the fund balance and putting that back into the to the budget to fill in some of the gaps for the decreases that the comprehensive budget had in it. But I don't think it's going to be a pretty process. There have been a number of accusations that have been about the lack of transparency and how Commissioner Songvi came up with the budget. That was something she addressed last night at the very beginning of her agenda. And I think that it seems to me that the city council is still looking for more numbers, a better and more thorough explanation of how the original comp budget was arrived at. So, hopefully, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the only person, maybe, I don't know this for sure, but that the comp budget made happy was the mayor. I think everybody else is not happy with the budget.
Right.
So it's I think what you're going to see, I agree with Robin on this one, that you're going to see she's going to pull some money from the fund balance. That the fund balance is a city savings account that has a lot of money in it right now. She's going to pull some money from there, try to patch up some holes. And the council is going to have to pass it, because they don't want to be the council that they're all Democrats up there. It's kind of a black eye to have to revert to the comprehensive budget as a budget you passed. It's happened before in the city, but it doesn't happen often. So I think they're just going to have to, there's going to be a lot of grumblings. There's going to be amended budget that again is not going to make most people happy, but the city council is going to have to pass it, because the comprehension budget makes nobody happy. But the problem is that amended budget is going to come a week before or a week and a half before it's got to be voted on and passed, which is not a lot of time for the public to digest it. But I
know,
it
because
is what it is.
I'm not sure the public during Thanksgiving, while they're like cooking their turkey, is like going over the amended budget numbers and has an opportunity to weigh in. And I think that's a shame, because I really do think Commissioner Songby really put an emphasis on having the public participate in this process. And unfortunately, with the timing now, I think that's going to be really challenging. And I also think it's really difficult to go through the budget. I mean, trying to go through it line by line is not something that like a lay person can do. It's extraordinarily dense and challenging. But
Commissioner Madigan's dealing with her.
Okay, her prediction.
proposal.
My prediction is that Commissioner Songby will propose a budget with a potential decrease in her tax increase, adding back some priorities to all departments, and this budget will have at least 3 votes. Of course, she wants a unanimous vote on her first budget, but 3 votes will carry the day. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
I'm trying to work it so I don't interrupt you guys talking, but want to get.
No, thanks.
No, we have
an
expert chiming in. So
thank you.
I know, and Dan, we don't mean to talk over you at all. It just, it so happens that Adam and I suffered through a 2.5 hour long.
Yeah, my role here is really to just ask you some questions to sort of some interesting questions from my perspective anyway.
One thing I thought was a good solution by Commissioner Shangbee. I mean, this is kind of minor compared to the overall budget, but Water and Sewer is its own fund. It's its own money. It's in its own account, and right now it dictates what that fund. There's city policy. I don't know if it's law, but city policy says what that fund should be. That fund is too low right now, and so the Commissioner of Finance only makes recommendations to DPW about what that essentially tax should be on your water and sewer. And I thought she had a very creative answer, or very creative solution with. And I reached out to Commissioner Shangbee and Commissioner Golub to get to define exactly what it entails. But essentially, what it is if you build a condominium building, you pay 1 hookup for that building. But if you have 20 condominiums in there, it really should be 20 hookup fees being assessed. And so she was, kind of adding, kind of equalizing what people pay. Condominium owners essentially kind of had to pass around some of the fees that you or I as a homeowner would pay to get our water hooked up. And
Wasn't that a controversy?
It's not parity.
A scandal?
There was a controversy. No, Dan is right. So there was several years ago, there was a controversy because the city waived the connection fees for Bonaccio Construction in the construction of one of their condominiums. And that was a very controversial decision by Commissioner Sirocco at the time. And so yes, Dan, sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, Adam, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, if we were a show, back then we'd talk about that. But yeah, it's politics. Sometimes it's. But the condos. Believe it or not, my father built the condominiums in this city back in the 90s on Railroad Place, the first major condominium project, and so condominiums are relatively new to the city. They haven't been around. They have been in New York City for a while, and one thing is that the private sector moves faster than the public sector. So the private sector is building condominiums, leveraging their power to not pay. And that's just what private sector does. Their job is not to pay fees and taxes if they don't have to. And so I think the public sector has struggled to keep up with some of these things. So I like to see, as a homeowner and as somebody who agrees in parity, I would like to see everybody pay their fair share. So we won't hammer on Commissioner Shangbee too hard for not having that amended budget yet. But that's something I thought she brought up, and we'll see what Commissioner Golub does with it.
I will say I feel like I pay a lot for my water.
What's that?
A quick aside on that. Condominiums already get tremendous favorable real property law as far as taxation.
Yeah.
If you got a bunch of single family homes and then you've got some condos across the street, the condos in the real property law are taxed with a very different method. Based on an income analysis of the rental income. And when I lived on Union Avenue, I had a condo that I sold for the 300,000 range, but it was assessed at like 75 because of that law.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You know what's interesting? I've owned 2 condos in 2 kind of desirable places, and both of those places tax the S out of the condos because and there's nothing you can do because you don't live there, you don't vote there. So
I was just going to say there are a lot of times there's second homes, and
yeah. So I mean that would seem like if this is your second home, you should. I don't think you should be paying more, but you should absolutely be paying your fair share. I mean, I know when I lived in the Virgin Islands, there was actually a law. This is the craziest thing, but there was a lawsuit brought by the condominium owners because it was the disparity of them paying way too far, too much. And for like 3 years, nobody paid no property taxes in the Virgin Islands because of this lawsuit that was going on. But certainly condo owners should not be paying less than the homeowners. Whether they're paying more, no. But
you guys, I have to say, I have never owned a condo. So I really don't have much to weigh in on what's here. Unlike you two, I've never owned a condo. But I personally feel like we pay a lot for our water. Like I feel like our water bill is always like pretty significant. Maybe that's just because the Dalton family uses too much water. But
you take long showers.
Yeah, but I would hope that rate would not go up for single family homes and non-condominium users. But
and it was due yesterday, folks, that water bill.
But I do think it was a creative and good recommendation that she was making to DPW, and I'll be interested to see how they follow up on that.
Yeah. What other thing? So let's moving on. And Robin, you and I both watched this, and then neither of us caught the outcome of this, and maybe you've gotten some word back. But Commissioner Moran brought up a proposal to kind of cut the wait time for people to obtain their alcohol license.
Yes. So basically what happens is that when you go to open a restaurant or a bar and you want to serve alcohol, you apply with the New York State Liquor Authority for a liquor license. That can take a really long time. In the interim, you can apply for a temporary 30-day license from the city so you can get going. And while you're waiting for your permanent liquor license from the SLA. And so all I can say is that when we were on the city council, when those requests came in, we were able to sign off on them by email. So they would ask all the commissioners and the mayor to weigh in. This is the request we got. Are you in favor of approving this or not? And we would all just email around and say yes or no. I don't think there was ever a time we really said no, to be honest with you. Although one of the things that was kind of interesting that came up that's kind of tangential here was the issues of bars closing and how late they can serve alcohol. The city could actually be putting a restriction on these new temporary liquor licenses saying that the bar could only serve liquor until 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. or whatever it may be. And so I just thought that was kind of an interesting avenue to address the bar closing issue. But Commissioner Moran was talking about just streamlining this process, I think, to make it easier for people to obtain this liquor license and get open. And I think that's a really important endeavor because I think we always want to facilitate a success with our small businesses here, especially people who are starting small businesses here. And if that's one way we can do it, I think that's great.
I think if I understand it correctly, he wanted to bypass the city council approval or eliminate it.
He wanted the city attorney to be able to sign off on it. So it's just to cut down the amount of signatures that are needed and the emails that are sent and the back and forth.
Wait time, yeah.
Yeah, and I could say I'll say because I've been through this. I remember when we purchased a bar and restaurant in Saratoga, and it was just as a private business owner, you just want to go, you want to be open, you want to start serving liquor, and to be held back by bureaucracy just for bureaucracy's sake is absolutely asinine. And I will say, Commissioner Moran the city, again, has been built by the small businessman and woman. A lot of those are bars and restaurants. And it's I understand there's a lot of weight with serving alcohol, but to be honest with you, the state, there's laws that's been on the book since the blue laws. The state liquor authority is like, they have more power than a totalitarian leader to come down on you. And it's just crazy that these laws that while in theory have a purpose, there's much more quicker and efficient ways, because at the end of the day, these businesses being open generate jobs, they generate tax revenue. And I think, kudos to Chris Moran with the outdoor dining, with this, process. He's really kind of showing himself as pro small business in a way that, that I don't necessarily would have attached to a Democrat, to be honest with you.
I have to weigh in on that too. So Commissioner Moran and I, as you both know, were like diametrically opposed in politics. I don't really know why. I don't really know how it started, but there was no love between the two of us at all. No communication, no love at all. I have been so impressed with how he has functioned on the city council. He seems to me like the person on the city council that has the most institutional knowledge of how the city government runs, like hands down, the most knowledge about how the city council meetings are supposed to run. He has been incredibly aggressive in getting things done, and really working hard and producing results through the accounts department. And he and I have connected and established a relationship, which has been really nice because, the thing, regardless of whether or not we agree on policies or politics or, resolutions going through the city council, I have infinite respect for people who care about the city as much as he cares about the city and put that, passion into public service for the city. And I just think he's done a spectacular job and deserves a little shout out.
Yes, and I owe him an apology, by the way, from a few weeks ago when Adam and I were on. I said there were no early voting locations here in Saratoga, and I was just completely wrong. He called me up. I missed it. I don't know how I missed it. I drove to Boston Spa to do early voting, which isn't bad because the gas is ridiculously cheap down there, at least relative to Saratoga. But Dylan, I want to publicly acknowledge you were absolutely correct. You did a lot of work on getting that location, I understand. Here at the rec center on Vanderbilt.
At the rec center,
so
yeah.
I missed it, folks.
Also, he did mention that he is working to it's the function of the accounts department to work with the BOE on polling places and whatnot. And so he did say that if anyone was interested in being a poll worker in the future, that they should contact him because they're always looking for poll workers. And I was happy to hear that because I applied twice to the county BOE to be a poll worker for the midterms because I'm a geek and I wanted to do it. And I never heard anything back. And I was kind of bummed about it because I really wanted to be part of that process. But so if anyone is interested in that in the future, he says they always need help and you should get in touch with him. You should get in touch with Commissioner Rance.
That's a 15-hour, that's like a 16-hour day, isn't it?
Yeah, Robin can handle a 16-hour day. Come on, Dan.
Okay,
so
just making sure you're up for it.
Listen, we're coming up on almost an hour, and I feel like we should probably move on to our cheers and jeers and wrap it up. What do you think, boys?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, let me see if I can find the cheers and jeers banner.
It's all the way. It's not in banners. You've got to go down to brand.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. That works.
How's that?
All right. Well, we won't do my amazing animation, the cheer and the jeer, but that's okay. So, guys, I've got some quick cheers and jeers. Do you mind if I go first here?
Go for it.
Okay. My first cheer is not Saratoga Springs based, but it was last night. I was kind of amped up because I watched the Trump presidential announcement, which really got me going. And I was having a hard time falling asleep. And I was on Twitter. And all of a sudden, I'm watching a space shuttle take off from Cape Canaveral last night at about 1 a.m. called Artemis. And it was freaking phenomenal. It was so cool to watch it. I'm sorry, but there's nothing more exciting to me than seeing a space shuttle take off from Cape Canaveral. It will never be not freaking cool. And I would encourage everybody to go on NASA's Twitter account and watch it and hear the people talking about it who are involved in the launch. It was just so awesome. And they had kind of like they had a live stream going on and commentators from NASA like talking about it. And it was just fascinating. And it really perked me up and got Trump off my mind and I was able to fall asleep. So my cheer is for Artemis and I would encourage everybody to go check it out. My jeer, and this is going to be a persistent jeer from now through the end of March, is the goddamn weather because I hate snow. There's nothing worse than a wintry mix. I hate ice. And so like jeer to the weather. You stink. And Dan, I apologize for giving you SHIT for ever, cheering or jeering the weather. It is an absolutely appropriate cheer. So anyway, that's all I got.
Excellent. Adam, you want to go?
Go for it, Dan.
Okay. My cheer and a kind of a quasi jeer come from the current issue of Saratoga Living Magazine, the holiday issue, which is out on newsstands, Hannaford, Price Chopper, all sorts of stores around Saratoga. Although they're hard to get because I've been trying to get some copies in so get out there quickly and get it.
Who's on the cover?
They profile this handsome devil, Adam Israel, for the great work you've done, Adam. There's of course a cheer, the great work you've done in Poland and even in the Ukraine. You've been a number of times. You've done a lot of fundraising here. It's on page 79 of the issue, and there are some other people I should acknowledge in there as well under the Saratoga Gives Back heading. So get a copy of that and read about Adam and Dan Graham, Maggie Frank,
Oh,
Andy
Maggie's amazing.
Berger, and Nancy Underwood, as well as Adam. Congratulations, Adam. Everybody should be acknowledging this. I'm glad they did.
Adam, why are you not the cover? Why didn't you get the cover, Adam? Come on.
I know. I got to talk to Abby about that.
Yeah,
With a beautiful mug. How could you not, huh?
Dan, who is on the cover?
Saratoga Grays, which it'd be interesting to
Erica
talk
Dibble,
more
I think.
about her.
Erica Dibble.
Erica Dibble and Saratoga Grays?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So Erica, I actually know Erica well. She started a company called Saratoga Grays that does these like beautiful charcuterie boards. They're really like visually stunning. So go on Instagram and check out Saratoga
beautiful
Grays.
photos. And I'm going to give myself a quick plug from this issue. I wrote this article about the fact that the Buffalo Bills were actually conceived by founding owner Ralph Wilson here at Saratoga Racecourse.
No way!
Read the article. And there are a lot of connections between Ralph Wilson and Saratoga. And I did a lot of research. Abby did a great job of helping me along in editing and so forth. So a shout out to Abby and a lot of other people in the Spa City that helped me out with this. And I got to do a Facebook post acknowledging all the help I got on that. So
wait, you guys are saying I'm the only one from the Saratoga podcast not featured in this issue of Saratoga Living?
Yes.
What the hell?
My sister's in it. My sister and dad are in it too.
And I'm going to slip in one last not a little cheer, but a quick cheer to the Saratoga Auto Museum that is starting the James Bond car exhibit starting this Friday. That's going to bring people in from hundreds of miles. I think it's from what I understand, people all over the Northeast. Really, any Bond fan that doesn't mind traveling is going to come here for it. Folks, get to the Auto Museum starting Friday. For members, starting Thursday. Members of the media on Thursday. So. But starting Friday, open to the public. They had a killer video. I should have talked to you guys about it ahead of time about putting it on here. I didn't even think of that. It was a really cool video where they filmed the original Aston Martin from the early 60s driving around here in the Spa City with the Bond music. It was well done. So go to the Auto Museum website to view that. It's just about, a minute long.
You guys, I'm giggling only because I don't know if any of you guys saw Dave Chappelle do his opening monologue on SNL this past Saturday. But he described, sorry, this is totally inappropriate, but he described Melania Trump as someone that looks like James Bond would sleep with, but wouldn't trust. And I thought it was like the funniest description of Melania that I've ever heard. So anyway, sorry. Just brings that up.
Wasn't there a big controversy with his show? Didn't some writers walk out and that and so forth?
They, you know what? I guess so. I haven't watched a lot of Dave Chappelle stuff, but in one of his Netflix specials, he was accused of making some transphobic remarks. And so when SNL booked him to do this past Saturday show, some of the writers like walked out or, said they wouldn't be there because of his transphobic remarks in one of his specials. To me, personally, to walk out, it was basically like they were offended before anything had even happened. And I thought that was really silly. And I thought his opening monologue was freaking brilliant, to be honest with you. And,
Well,
these
I think
people...
you can make the argument that there was anti-Semitic parts to his opening monologue, but that's comedy, and it's a really kind of thin line because being Jewish, you kind of see what he said about the trans community, and I saw that as not quite comedy, but just a different angle on it, and the remarks about he talked a while about Jews.
He did.
It was slightly anti-Semitic, but that I think if we get offended and cancel everything in this culture, then we become communists.
Wait, so Adam, my question for you though was because I was thinking about that and literally watched that monologue 2 or 3 times. To me, it was like he was walking that line of being observational, but also pointing out the absurdity of some of the anti-Semitic remarks that Ye had made, meaning Kanye had made.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
We'll talk about this another time.
We're getting off on a tangent here, folks. Adam, you got to get to some cheers and jeers.
Did you ever see the Seinfeld where he converted for the jokes? As far as I know, James not Jewish. But all right. Anyway,
sorry.
Coming to my cheers and jeers. I didn't have a cheers and jeers today, so I thought I'd do a little commentary, a little Adam's take on it. Right. So I just want to talk about the Donald Trump and last night's announcement. So we all know Trump announced his intention to become the Republican nominee of the United States. A lot of people know I'm a rhino and, a Republican in name only. I'm not a believer in Trump, but I believe it's, time for the Republicans to move past his brand of politics. A lot of people label Donald Trump as a racist. I don't believe he's a racist or a bigot. I think he's a narcissist.
You don't think he's I'm signing off.
Well, I think Donald Trump sees you whether you benefit him or not. That's how he views life, right? And it doesn't matter if you're black, brown. He likes you or hates you, not dependent on your color, your skin, but who you are. But
Wrong.
Anyway, let me finish. We can talk about that more later. But I think if the Republicans hope to, perform in future elections, they must, stop excusing his political style for policies they see as favorable, which is something they'll do. They like what he's accomplished, and they'll excuse, things like January 6th for what he's accomplished, which is asinine. As Ron DeSantis showed us in Florida, there are other, Republicans that can win elections and can deliver on Republican and conservative values. The Donald Trump experiment has failed. If you don't believe me, look at the scores of individuals in his administration who are now saying he's not fit for office. The Republicans must reject his brand of politics and embrace the McCain Republicans again. The Republicans who believe in kindness and decency as well as fiscal conservative and support for our country, and these issues are not mutually exclusive. So, Robin, while you
I'm like fuming over here. I'm fucking fuming.
I think that was well stated.
The Republicans have a lot of soul searching to do in the next year, and they're going to see the list of candidates grow and then get small. But I hope they move on from the Donald Trump politics.
Yeah, Adam, no shit, buddy. And everything you just said applies to 2016, 2018, 2020, 2021, 2022. And the Republicans don't do it. There's nothing to be salvaged in the current Republican Party, in my opinion. Whatever. You know what? I could talk about this forever. I disagree with a lot of what you said. I think Donald Trump is a cancer. But I think the Republican Party responds to him because he goes for the jugular. They like that. They like the outrage politics. They're still involved in that. They don't have any policy positions to offer. DeSantis is also not a conservative Republican. I would not describe him as such. But the Republican Party really needs to figure out what its ideology is and what the policies are that they stand behind, because currently they have none but culture wars and outrage and racism and bigotry and narcissism. Just everywhere.
A quick interjection. If Harry Wilson would have won that Republican primary for governor here in the state, he would have won the election.
There were so many examples actually across the country of Republicans who were a lot of times businessmen, moderates, that lost primaries to people who were supported by Trump, who are election deniers. And all the analysis has really showed in a lot of the critical races, like the Fetterman-Dr. Oz race. Dr. Oz beat out a very moderate, popular Republican businessman in a primary by only 900 votes or so, and largely because of the Trump endorsement. And a lot of people say that race was very close. If that businessman had gotten the nomination as opposed to Dr. Oz, Fetterman would not have won that U.S. Senate seat. So I agree. Trump's got to go for sure. I just don't know if the Republican Party will ever be able to do that.
Well, with inflation and gas prices the way it is, somebody's got to do something, right?
Yeah, but yeah.
Guys, we got to sign off. We're at a minute 2.
We got to sign off. All right.
Okay. Folks, thanks for watching. Thanks
Next
for
week you
up with
can do
us.
a commentary. I had nothing, so here's a year, so I ad-libbed a little bit, but
I love it. I don't mean to be disrespectful.
And thanks for the comments.
No, this is what makes
I missed one here. Thanks for the comments, folks.
Yeah. All right,
Okay.
guys.
All right,
Quit
thank
while
you
we're
very
ahead. The Saratoga podcast. We're not afraid to share expressions or opinions.
Yeah, check us out on YouTube, Google, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify. We're all over the place. Subscribe, like, share. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for watching.
Dan, you got to take us out. I don't have control.